What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are having a really nice week. I hope you guys are having a really nice day. But yeah, let's just get straight onto the video. As the title suggests, or as the title states, do you need 4K? And actually, yes and no. Let me tell you what I mean about this. So first, what does 4K actually mean? What does HD mean? Well, HD stands for high definition. And what they are is essentially the resolution that either your camera records in or your display screen shows you. Now, resolution is the amount of pixels that create that image. For example, HD is 1280 across times by 720 down or up, whichever one. And those times together create the resolution in which you are watching or which you are recording. That's one type of HD. Another type of HD is the HD which you guys are more aware of, which is 1920 across and 1080p down. And that is the resolution in which you guys are used to seeing things on TV or on your smartphones. And that's essentially like the standard of definition that we are watching or recording things in this day and age. Now, taking a step further than that is something that we call Ultra HD or 4K. And that is 3,840 pixels across times by 2,160 pixels down. And that's what you call Ultra HD, or what a lot of people call 4K. And there's resolutions even above that, like True 4K or Cinema 4K, which essentially is 4,096 pixels across and 2,160 pixels down. And what this does, it gives you a wider screen or display that you can project these pixels onto. And that's essentially a rundown of HD, 4K, Ultra 4K, Cinema 4K. That's what they are. Essentially, they are resolutions that you either record or watch things back on. There are other resolutions which are even higher than that, like 8K, but we won't even get into that today. And as the name suggests, 4K is actually 4 times bigger than 1080p. So just to give you a kind of understanding of how many pixels there are as compared to HD, which is 1080p. And to give you a better understanding of numbers, HD has 2 million pixels in a frame or in its resolution, whereas 4K has 8 million. So that's a big comparison, that's a big difference as to how many pixels there are between 4K and HD. Now, actually answering the question, do you need 4K? If you're asking this question to yourself or to other people, the chances are is probably that you don't need 4K, just simply because you don't understand what it means to have a 4K image. I suppose the question that you should be really asking yourself is, what are you creating content for? Where are you going to upload this final thing that you've created onto? What platform is it going to be shown in? Are you going to be uploading it to YouTube? Or are you going to be uploading it to social media like Instagram or Facebook? Or are these going to be things that you're doing for clients? And these are all valid questions that you should have before thinking about whether it's shooting 4K or HD. Now, if you are uploading content to things like Instagram or other social media platforms, you need to take into consideration that Instagram does not support 4K at all. Essentially, it only supports 1080p. And even further than that is when you upload a 1080p video or anything onto Instagram, what Instagram does, it has to compress the file even further down so that it can play back and so it can process it so that we can then watch it. So the HD video that you're actually uploading isn't HD at all. It becomes very blurry, it's not very sharp, just because of all the compression that Instagram or other social media platforms have to do in order for your video to be watchable. And I go as far as to say that this is actually below the resolution quality of 720, which is the lower end of HD. So if you are thinking of creating content for places like Instagram, I say that HD is absolutely fine. That's all you need because it doesn't support 4K videos anyway. Another thing to take into consideration is where you're going to be watching this content from. Is it going to be from your smartphone? Is it going to be from a laptop or desktop? Or are you going to be watching this content on TV? So the iPhone 11, for example, has a screen that displays videos at 1080p. So you wouldn't get the full 4K quality in it anyway. I'm sure there are other phones that do have the 4K quality, but this is just to take consideration as to where you're watching these videos from. To give you guys a bit of a comparison, an example of what 4K, HD, and True 4K actually is, I'll show a couple of things here and I'll give you a comparison so that you can see the difference between what HD is, 4K, and Cinema 4K is, so that you can make your own judgments of what is better. So here we have one of my pairs of Jordans. This one is the 8 Aqua colorway, and this is we shot in Cinema 4K. This one we're shooting in Ultra HD, which is what we call 4K as well. And we have HD at 1080p, which was the standard of what we see. So just a quick comparison between the two. This is the Cinema 4K and the Ultra HD. And if you look in closely, you can start seeing a very slight difference around the edges here by the Jumpman logo. And here you can actually see a little bit more definition and a little bit more detail in the Cinema 4K version, as opposed to the Ultra HD version, which you can see here, the inside of the red circle has a little less detail on it. Now here's a comparison from Ultra HD to the HD that we're used to, which is at 1080p. And here's where you can really see the difference. On the left hand side, the Ultra HD, you can see a lot more detail than the standard HD, which is the 1080p version. And you can see there's no definition around the edges of the logo, and you can't see the detail in the shoe or in the fabric of the shoe. And here we have the plants from my balcony shot at Cinema 4K, Ultra HD, and Standard HD, which is the 1080p. And I want to see if you guys can spot the difference. So here we have Cinema 4K as opposed to Ultra HD. And here you can pick up a little bit of the detail, especially within the leaves. And you can see there's a lot more detail in the Cinema 4K as opposed to the Ultra HD. And you can kind of tell the difference where the lines are just a little bit sharper. However, if we now compare the Ultra HD to the 1080p HD, then you can really tell the difference. There's a lot more texture, there's a lot more definition, there's a lot more detail in the Ultra HD, or the 4K as you may, as opposed to the standard HD. You can see that these lines on the HD version are quite blurry and muddled up. And this is really where you can kind of get an understanding of how much sharper 4K is as compared to HD. I hope you guys were able to see the differences between what the pixel range can do in HD to 4K and Cinema 4K. So I hope that little example helped a little bit. So there's this big kind of idea that goes around content creating and YouTube as well, but there's very little difference between 4K and HD. And essentially that's not true at all. So the people who are saying this are probably watching and comparing HD to 4Ks on something like their smartphones or their tablets, where you can't see the difference because, again, like I said, the display doesn't allow you to see 4K. Another thing that you might want to take into consideration is that their monitors might not be compatible to display 4K images, or their computer isn't powerful enough to handle 4K images, so it has to downscale it. So these are a lot of things that go into when you're actually working with 4K files. So if you are thinking whether to go from HD or 4K, another question that you need to ask yourself is your computer powerful enough to handle these files? Because 4K is such a massive file size that the majority of computers can't actually handle them when it comes to the editing room. The software doesn't allow you to handle such big files with so much data in them. So one of the advantages of shooting with HD is that the files are so much smaller that your computer can process them easier, which means you can edit things a lot quicker than editing in 4K, because the computer just can't handle such a mass amount of data. And also, again, because 4K has so much data, it takes up a lot more space on your computer. So your hard drive gets full a lot quicker with 4K files than it does with HD files, of course. So this is a con to have in 4K and a pro to have in HD. Man, you hear that? That was crazy. Just like ambulance, police, and fire engines gone at the same time. Now, you're probably watching this video and thinking, wow, he's really pro HD against 4K. And no, I actually think that people should record in 4K as much as they can, just because with the evolution of technology and smartphones getting better and better every year, I feel like the standard definition, sorry, not standard definition, I feel like the high definition that we're so accustomed to is going to die out in the next couple of years, and everyone's going to be shooting in 4K and they're going to be watching things in 4K, and computers are going to be able to process things much easier. So I do think that right now, the times that we're living in, probably if you're creating content for social media and YouTube, HD is absolutely fine, but I do suggest maybe dabble into the 4K side of things just to see how it would affect your workflow. And I do think that we should be used to working with higher quality footage and start seeing higher quality content in 4K videos. So I am pro people using 4K videos as opposed to high definition, but both do have its pros and cons. But with the evolution of technology, I think ultimately we are going to be switching from the high definition and going into the Ultra HD, which is the 4K that I've been talking about. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on where I'm at with 4K and HD. And do you need 4K? The answer is yes and no. No if you're just starting out, and yes because we are going to start evolving into 4K, so it's better that you get used to seeing things in 4K and working with 4K videos. If you did find this video useful or helpful in any sort of way, then please give us a like and make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you like the content that I'm going to be putting out for the last couple of weeks, then do subscribe again because it does help out a lot, and I like seeing the numbers go up on the YouTube channel. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.